Where this all started was this wonderful model that we were given in the artificial intelligence industry, which really did what we wanted all along. When they wrote that paper, it was like groundbreaking. People that were in the industry and looking at that were thinking like, oh, this is really powerful. This is like how a lot of big models have developed themselves as well. You can almost bootstrap them.
And that is ego. Ego, people hear the word ego and they want to think negativity, that ego is bad. Well, without ego, you would not be Cole. If AI becomes all-knowing, AGI of what they refer to.
Right.
Is that God? Hello, you beautiful people. Welcome back to Talkin St. Another great episode. I'm super excited about today's guest. Before we dive into that, I want to let you know that this podcast is sponsored by Bogdan Homes here at Keller Williams St. Pete. So if you know anyone or yourselves who need any real estate needs, anything at all, find our contact information in the description below. And now on to our amazing guests. I have Cole Smith, the founder of Opal, he's my first software engineer that I'm interviewing, doing some cool things in the AI space and mental health. Cole, welcome to the show.
It's a pleasure, man. Yeah, great to meet you.
Yeah, likewise. I'm super excited to dive into your world because I've been really exploring AI lately, and I think that some type of software development or company or partnering with somebody in some shape or form is in my future. And so, yeah, I want to unpack to how you got to where you are. So why don't you let everyone know what Opal is as you developed it, and then we'll unpack the story of how you got there.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I'm the founder of Opal, and we almost consider ourselves like the front door for therapy. And what I mean by that is like the first thing that you're able to see when you figure out that you need that help and you need that treatment. But it's also that thing that you can return to at every sort of step of the way in your treatment. It's always that thing that's there for you to connect back to your therapist, whether that be at 3 a.m., whether that be in the heat of the moment when you need it the most.
So it's going to be an app.
There. Yeah, exactly. And it's an app that you can access anywhere, right? Okay. So we hosted it on the web. You don't have to download an app. You know how it is, like download our app. That's always such a barrier. So you can just find it on the web, sign in there. You don't even need an account to try it out. But if you do, you can connect it to your therapist, and then they see your interactions. We summarize that for them, and it informs your treatment so you get better outcomes.
Okay, so before we go into all the things of what it's going to be able to do and how you got there, why don't you help us explain a little bit about your background? Because I think that's going to be unique and cool of like, how do you get yourself in a position to create something like Opal? So you've been in St. Pete since 2003, and what's happened after that?
Yeah, absolutely, man. So it's been a journey, right? Of course. And all of it is sort of like this sort of winding path that will take you down various ways, and every day looks a little bit different. But, today we're here, and how we got here is I'll start with where I was in college, right? So I left St. Pete for a few years to go to NYU for college. And there I studied computer science. I got really into artificial intelligence at the time. This was back when people were really obsessed with like self-driving cars and like computer vision. People didn't care so much about natural language processing. Yeah, exactly. Or really like how humans and computers interacted. But I always really liked that sort of thing. And I always figured that's where like the future of AI would really find ourselves, is in how we interact with machines in an intelligent way, right? So that's what I studied and researched during college. I published some papers there. I won some awards for those papers at NYU as well. And then I went to work off in the finance field. That was just, what you do in New York, right? There's plenty of finance companies there. So I was working at Morgan Stanley. I was working on their trading desk and building some models around document understanding for them. It was a lot of fun, but I realized that, I always wanted to start my own thing. And one thing that really made a difference for me in college, and why I kind of brought it back to college, is because that was actually the first time that I went through therapy myself, right? And I was going down a path that would look really different from where I am today if I didn't go through therapy. So it really made a huge impact on my life, and it made an impact on my life because I had the therapist that went that extra mile for me. Now, at the same time, my mom's a therapist. I grew up around therapy. It was always a thing that was kind of permeated in my life. And when I moved back here, which was really my wife's idea, she
you met her in New York?
I did, yeah. So she's from New York, and she decided like, oh, we're in this like little apartment, it's 2021, like we're not going anywhere. Like, let's get back to the sunshine. Let's get back to like this place that's in such a renaissance right now, which we can talk about later. So when we did that, it gave me the opportunity to see behind the curtain of my mom's practice. I could really see the challenges that you don't see, as a client when you're going through these things, and how that really affects the treatment at the end of the day that you receive as a client. So we figured there were ways that we could make this much better, right? So her practice almost became like a test bed for some of the early stuff that we were doing with Opal.
Before we keep going on Opal, because I want to unpack because I went to school for entrepreneurship and innovation management. So software and like your computer science world is so fascinating to me. So you're early in the AI models. You said you predicted that that's where it was going to go. You wrote some papers. What precursors gave you that indication?
Oh man, that's a great question. And to me, the highest form of intelligence is empathy. And what I mean by that is the ability for me or somebody else to know what's going on in your head, right? That's a very complex task for any intelligent being to have to do, right? But and I'm not saying that machines today are necessarily empathetic, but I always saw it as like this North Star of, where we would bring artificial intelligence. And I really always think it has to come back to this human element, to this point of like, how are we going to help ourselves understand our own intelligence? I mean, if I were to do things differently, like if I were to turn back the time, I would love to study like neuropsychiatry and like the mind-brain emergence factor, because I just think there's this inexplicable link between psychology and artificial intelligence.
Have you read the book How We Learn?
No, I haven't.
Okay, I'll show it to you later. But it's all about. I have it only. I mean, it's dense, but it's all about that. All the neurodivergence, all the things that happens in the brain, neuro connections, everything of what happens when we go to learn something. And so, and the guy who recommended it to me was teaching an NLP class. So,
nice.
So it was very, very, very connected to that. So yeah, back to precursors that you're saying. So empathy is the highest level of intelligence, which I love that definition and how you describe that, because that is a very hard thing if you even look at the computer models now to be able to pick up on empathy. And when I say, I think and a lot of CEOs, their EQ is sometimes higher than IQ.
Of course, yeah. I think it can be a difficult thing to develop, right? It's a talent almost, but it's a talent and it's also a skill to develop that sort of thing. I think we're getting towards this realm where machines are able to kind of think about empathy in a way of what is going on in the user's head. They can reason about you a little bit, but it's all still very mechanical, right? It is almost the illusion of empathy. So you see a lot of people that put a lot of emphasis on what a machine is telling them or what an AI language model is telling them. But today it's still very much like a parroting thing. It's very much based upon this body of knowledge that we've built up around the internet, right? It's based up upon how humans behave necessarily online or in text or in things that we've written down. Yeah.
So I want to bring you back to that. So you're in college. What were you seeing that said, okay, these language models and AI is going to be the future? And where was the state of AI at that time?
Oh, yeah. So like I said, the state of AI at the time was everybody was obsessed with how computers see things, right? Self-driving cars, they were always this thing that was like 10 years away. They were 10 years away 10 years ago. They're still 10 years away right now. So we're still going towards that, which another like very complex task to kind of figure out. But the thing that I noticed in college, I took an NLP class as well. I was fascinated by it. I was fascinated by like not only like the implications of having a computer that was able to say something coherent that, wasn't based on any sort of rule set, just based upon really the mathematics of what comes before it, right? It's based upon the context that you give it, and then it comes up with pretty much an intelligent response to that sort of context. And that was always really cool to me. And at the time, it was really simple, right? You kind of distill a phrase or a concept down into a string of numbers, and then you get another string of numbers out of it. And then you arise some sort of language from that. Now, it's a very simple, like overly simplification of how that sort of thing works.
Sure.
But I was like, there's something to this, right? Like there's something really cool.
And are your professors at the time saying, "Hey, these language models are coming," because chat's not on our radar at that time? Like, what's going on at that time space to the technology that was out that you guys were using to learn this?
Yeah, so the big thing that came out around that time was GPT-2
Okay.
by OpenAI.
Okay.
So when they wrote that paper, it was like groundbreaking. People that were in the industry and looking at that were thinking like, oh, this is really cool, really interesting. That was the first time we really had a model that was able for you to give it some sort of text context understanding, say something to it, and then it kind of spit out a response. And they use like kind of hacks to do it, right? Like it was trained on in part like Reddit data, so you know like the whole TLDR like acronym, that kind of thing. They figured out these little tricks that you could do with just trying to predict the next word based upon the words that came after it, where they were like, oh, you can just give it text, and then if you write TLDR, it's going to give you a summary afterwards, because that's what people are doing online. So it's like this mimicry kind of thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're okay. So you kind of learned up then on chat on GPT-2.
Yeah, so that was like the kind of breakthrough part of Transformers. So where this all started was this wonderful model that we were given in the artificial intelligence industry, which really did what we wanted all along. And it was this thing called a transformer. I'm sure you've heard of it with like ChatGPT.
But explain it further for those who aren't familiar.
Of course. So the thing that is so groundbreaking on it, and what enables all of this to happen, is it gave us this ability to take kind of like a blob of data and turn it into a different blob of data. And you could just train it to make that sort of transformation for you. Now, in the case of something like ChatGPT, they trained it in a way that it gave you a helpful response off of it. It was this question answer sort of thing. And that's where we started, was like people forming these gigantic data sets almost manually on like question response or like text and summary. And we stand on the backs of giants, really. We do, on people that made all of these things manually. And then it kind of snowballed into this like gigantic reasoning model and agents that we see today in the AI space.
Yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot there, right? And so I'm like asking questions for myself, but also making sure that we're keeping listeners up to date, right? Because not everyone's as immersed in what we're speaking on. Okay, so to fast forward just a little bit, you get all this knowledge, programming, you go start doing it sounds like some AI stuff for Morgan Stanley. And so where was the moment where you had the clarity and idea? Because I'm really fascinated in the seed of thought.
Yeah.
To when you're like, I need to create Opal. And I'm sure it wasn't even called Opal at the time. Right?
No, yeah, it was called something different.
Right,
Yeah, I'll walk you through that sort of thought process too. And you're right. It's that like light bulb moment that goes off in your head, right?
Yeah. Where were you?
I was here, and like I'm telling you, by moving back to
were you in the shower?
St.
Were you on the beach? Were you in the car?
I was on the balcony. Yeah, so I was just sitting on my balcony. I was just kind of so I live in an apartment building. You can just kind of look out to like this lake, and it doesn't matter what I was looking at, but I was just staring forward, and just in my own head, in my own thoughts, and then it kind of clicked in a way of like, everything that I've seen before on my mom's practice, of friends and family that were running like their own practices, I was like, there is this big problem here. And where we really started was writing clinical documentation for therapists. It was very much kind of like the low-hanging fruit at the time, I'll say, the thing where a lot of people will try to kind of do that first. They have to write these notes that take them hours after you get out of a session, and they don't get paid for it. It's wild. Yeah. Right. And they'll do it at like, 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. And you at the time, like, I would see my mom working on the kitchen table at close to midnight, trying to get everything done like for the next day.
Right. Because so she's in a session with a client. She might scribble chicken scratch notes of what's been going on.
Yeah, of course.
And now she needs to put that into a clinical paragraph or longer paper form.
Yeah, exactly. And the light bulb moment. Yeah, and that's perfect. Yeah. And the light bulb moment of when that really happened was around when ChatGPT came out. What was that? Like maybe 2 years ago.
Maybe 2 years ago. It's the anniversary.
January or so. It was really like, right around a 2 or 3 year mark right now. At that moment, a light bulb kind of went off in my head, and I was like, you now have a way to work in what I would consider low data fields, right? There's not like a massive training data set on therapy interactions and clinical notes, right? If you wanted to do anything before that moment, you would have needed that kind of data set to train like your own model on it. But what you can do today, and this is really powerful, this is like how a lot of big models have developed themselves as well. You can almost bootstrap them. So you have the model itself generate some guess of what you're going for. Say you give it like a mock therapy session, and it gives you back a summary of that. It might not be perfect. You have a clinician do it, but that's way faster than them going and writing that summary themselves, right? So you can bootstrap that data set yourself.
So
and that's where we
training it to say, okay, you were close, but I want it to be this way.
Exactly, right? It was like, you got it close, but like we needed to say X, Y, and Z, things that it could have never known in like the first place, right? So this gave you that wonderful moment to work in fields with very low data. And that's why you're seeing such an explosion of it right now in the mental or just the healthcare space in general, especially around like how doctors write their notes or how therapists write their notes. It was like the thing that everybody kind of started with, I think, for this reason.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're on the balcony. What was the exact thought though? Was it that okay, I can help take my mom's notes and give a clinical description based off of what she said and save the time? Was that the aha?
That was the aha for that. So this was a product that we called exactly. This is what got me into that journey. You know, I was always looking for not just an idea to work on when it came to starting your own business. And I'm sure, going through the entrepreneurial program, this sort of thing. It's not only about the right idea, but like the right viable idea, right? Like the thing that somebody is going to pay for, because you're not building for a solution, right? You're building for a problem. You have to be obsessed with the problem. And I got myself obsessed with the problem. I realized like they are putting maybe like 37 grand a year on the table by having to stress themselves out over this thing that's just there really for insurance at the end of the day. You said it yourself, and it was perfectly correct. They have notes already that they use to catch themselves up to speed. So this was a product called Numanotes that kind of abstracted that away from them. We wanted to go kind of beyond that and do much more, and that's what got us into Opal, but that was like the catalyst. That was that aha moment, that snowball that really started it going.
Okay, so you start there. So when was that?
That was 2023, kind of like the spring or summer of 2023. And I was moonlighting it with my day job. It was just this thing I was hacking around with kind of in the after hours of like, I liked building models. It's what I did. I was running the
So what do you, this is my nerd in me in this. What are you building this on at the time?
At the time? Oh man. So at the time, things moved so quickly. It was pretty much like straight code, right? So there's a framework that's just called PyTorch. It's not important what it's called, but you have to build it all yourself.
Okay, I'm just this is me like figuring out like your skill set of how much you had to know, because I don't know how to code.
And that's fine. You honestly don't even need to anymore. That's the best part, right? It's like these things can make you like entire programs that actually work really well now. It's kind of crazy.
It's crazy. It's crazy. Okay. So you're building up this language model that can take notes and make them clinical notes, and then from there, snowball happens. Where do we go from there? So this is 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And now we're at Opal.
Yeah.
So we're like, take us on that journey.
Yeah, absolutely. So the thing that we noticed was that it was solving a symptom of a much larger problem. And again, it's all about being obsessed with that problem, right? So it was solving the symptom of like asking yourself, why are these notes sort of complex? And the thing I was obsessed with, I realized, wasn't like clinical notes or anything like that. It was what is causing them to be a pain, really. And we figured out it was because, well, it's pretty simple, but therapy is a complex thing overall, right? It's a very complex relationship that you end up building with another person. The most probably complex relationship in healthcare overall, because, you don't need a relationship with your GP or your ENT or anything like that. But the thing that actually heals you, the only thing that we know right now that works in therapy is the therapeutic alliance. It's that relationship that you form with your therapist. So we figured, how do we strengthen that? If we can strengthen that, then we'll make the entire process better overall. Like if you can make progress easier and you're on the same page about it, there's mountains of research that says that you're going to get a better outcome. Everybody's going to be happier at the end of the day. Your therapist is going to be happier at the end of the day. And we thought, let's do that. Let's not just like mess around with some administrative thing. Let's make the care better at the end of the day. Yeah.
Okay. So what was your hypothesis on how to do that?
So we talked to maybe like 100 therapists probably at this point. Now at the time, we were talking more deeply with probably 8 or 10 clinicians that either ran their own practice or worked at like a larger practice. We were bouncing around these ideas of intercession support and, you know, where these sort of gaps kind of started in the therapy model. And what we noticed too was with the advent of things like ChatGPT, a lot of Gen Z people in particular started turning to it almost as not really a replacement for therapy, but like this supplement, right? It's like you have this feeling that you want to get out in the moment. And before, you know, maybe a year ago, you could either journal about it, you could kind of internalize it, you were left to your own devices on kind of how to do it. But people today want, you know, quicker results than maybe what therapy offers right now. So this was their kind of way of trying to achieve those quicker results. Now they won't heal you, but we can get it to the right person to heal you. Yet. Yeah. So that's
I'm gonna put a yet
exactly
there. Little asterisk next to that, right? So okay, so what is Opal doing in between sessions, intercession as you said, to keep that relationship with a therapist? So what happens? I to be frank, I haven't been on. I don't know.
Oh yeah, no problem.
So this is like, and this is good, right? Because listeners haven't been either. So describe to me. Okay, I have a therapist. We're both interlinked with Opal. Session ends. What do I do?
Yeah, and this really came about. And how we developed it was I often used it sort of myself. So it was this blood, sweat, and tears of like iterating not only in practices, but also just kind of like what I would want to see from the perspective of a client, really. It's not there to, you know, like give you advice or like if you were to ask just like ChatGPT or something about it, it's going to give you like all this like advice and try to like overanalyze things. It's there just to ask you like one question at a time. Like, oh my gosh, that sucks what you're going through. Tell me just like a little bit more about it. To like just get it all out.
So it is an intermediary therapist AI version. Not, I won't use the word therapist, but a catalyst between.
It uses therapy techniques. Yeah. So it's been developed with licensed clinicians and psychologists. And what we've built into it are certain techniques.
And so then are those notes then summarized from those conversations for the therapist to go read and say, hey, I saw at 3 a.m. the other morning you were having this conversation. Let's dive into that a little bit further.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is precisely what we see people using it for, right? It's always in kind of those off hours, right? Like you can't get a hold of them at 3 a.m. Or maybe there's a boundary there where you couldn't really get a hold of them anyways.
And so is this backbone of this AI model all you, or does it leverage any like chat, or is it a proprietary model that you've built?
So it does leverage you know, like vendored models that you can find out there. And we made that choice for a very, very good reason, actually. And it was that.
Yeah, because they've been trained with millions, if not billions of dollars right behind it. Like
exactly. Yeah. But the thing that they spent millions of dollars on too is safety, right? They've made these models incredibly safe. And you have this sort of phenomenon where if you were to fine tune it, where you kind of change how the model works without like prompting it necessarily, you can undo those sort of things. So if you don't have a department that is kind of dedicated, they call them like alignment departments or sometimes just safety. If you don't have a department that is dedicated to that sort of thing, you've put yourself in a risky situation where you've removed maybe some of those safeguards that the model was already trained on. Now we've built in our own safeguards kind of on top of this sort of thing. It's not just like a raw chatbot or anything like that, but by using and leveraging, you know, the hundreds of millions of dollars that they put into safety.
So this is essentially, and maybe I'm simplifying this too far, but and I'm just using GPT as a model.
Yeah, of course.
You've made a therapist GPT that's been programmed professionally by other therapists and clinicians.
Yeah,
Am I simplifying that too simple?
No, that's a very fair characterization.
Because I'm coming at this with like a 5th grade level, dude.
Oh yeah, dude, no problem.
I don't want to offend you or anything like that. I'm just trying to understand it in my mind. Like that's how I'm looking at this.
Yeah, of course. And that's a very good characterization. And what we describe it to clients as is like an intelligent journal. And we call it that because it kind of helps you wrap your head around like, why is this here? What is the objective of it? So it's not like, oh, I'm going to, give you this like replacement of me to, give you therapy. It's like, this is the thing that's going to give you the same catharsis as you would by sort of writing in a journal, but it's going to help you through that thought process. And when we do that and we get it to somebody who's an expert, that's where like the real healing can come into place, right? And we've had clients explain things to Opal that they've never explained during their sessions before because it was just really difficult, right? You have this anxiety of the hour to get everything out perfectly, but you don't have that with something like Opal. You can do it in a way that's on your time and think about it.
And when you have to put things into word in a sentence, and like you're not writing in your journal to your therapist and then saying, "Here, read this."
Yeah, of course. Like
right.
that book gets closed and then,
But
that's
not only that,
you.
but when you have to put your thought into written word, it's in the conversation, someone will ramble and maybe talk in a circle.
Yeah.
Right. But you're not going to write the same sentence 4 times over.
No, exactly.
Right. You're going to extrapolate. And after 12 minutes writing, there's research on this. Maybe, I don't know if you know this, but that's when you really start to get into the subconscious.
Exactly.
So
yeah.
to pull that thread a little bit further, right? And so I can see why the writing model is even better from a therapeutic standpoint. And then to have prompted questions to have you go deeper. I just did this exercise today. I taught a 6 personal perspectives class that we teach here within Keller Williams, and then finding your big why. And you know how we get to the big why? We ask why 7 times to get 7 layers deep.
Yeah, exactly.
You
find something new every time.
To really pull that out. And so I can really see why the right prompts can do this. And so now my question for you is, when do you replace the human aspect? Because I think that humans are probably going to be inefficient compared to this model 3, 5, 10 years from now.
Yeah, of course. And
not to scare the therapist, but we do, as in all industries, need to be looking at can and when does the AI do it better than you?
Exactly, of course. And kind of putting on like a more business hat right here, you have to follow the demand and follow the money on this sort of thing. So today, at least, you go to a lot of these sort of, go on Instagram, you could find like these ads for like AI therapists or something. I get like,
I don't even know. You're in the space.
Yeah, obviously. So I get like all the ads.
I don't even know it exists.
Research.
So yeah, this is the first I've heard
So
of
if
it.
you go to the comments on those, you find something really interesting. You find people saying, I don't want a robot doing my therapy. I want a real person. And you know what? I think where we are right now is that people very much empathize with the human aspect of it, right? It's like
it's that empathy and intelligence part that you were just talking about.
Yeah, or it's like you find somebody that you can relate to. You don't always want an oracle. You don't always need the like perfect answer. You might just need a relatable answer, right? A very difficult thing to do today really is just finding a therapist that is like you, or that you feel like you can relate to. That's sort of where we're going now with Opal, is like, how do we make that process better? How do we be that front door for the first thing that you see? So in my opinion, it's following the market.
I'm thinking in my head how beautiful this is, and where I actually think AI is going in all industries is getting this summary of, like, I see this beautifully, and it's genius what you've done, by the way, is, okay, I'm about to have, just for me, I meet with agents all day, every day.
Yeah.
And now, boom, I have a summary of their biggest problems and issues right in front of me. Boom, snapshot, I can read that. Now I can address it so much faster with the human element, right? And expertise and wisdom and empathy that comes with that in a way more efficient. What we're creating here is efficiency.
Yes, of course. And it's an efficiency of communication, in my opinion, right?
Right, because I can get to, whoa, okay, so over the night, it took you an hour to journal down, but boom, I got your the boilerplate version of what you got going on. And now let's take that a little bit further. Tell me about that, right? Where you already extrapolated and found out those issues. And now I got the summary.
Yeah, but like the beauty here too is that, like, we've been talking about mental health care, right? But you could almost take this same idea and apply it in so many other places. And that's the best part about sort of this agentic workflow that we have now. It could be broader than that. It could be healthcare. It could be real estate, right?
Well, I have ideas I want to talk to you about off air.
Yeah, of course.
Because I don't want anyone to take them. And my brain's been working on something for a minute. And what you saw me take notes on is you helped me connect a dot on something that we've been missing. Yeah, I'll get there. So Opal. Okay, so now you're taking this. You're in the process of raising some more funds. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So we're going to start a seed round. And like,
so what's that like? Because you're the first, I speak with a lot of local businesses that are here in St. And your local business here in St. Pete, but a lot of them are brick and mortar. Okay. So you're one of the first software companies and sometimes takes a little more capital, a little more exposure to really take these things to market. So what's that process been like in going into this raising capital world?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm happy to announce too that we were accepted into the Techstars program in Baltimore through Johns Hopkins and Blue Cross. So
congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, no, we're super excited about it. I think the connections that we're going to make there are going to be absolutely incredible. They give us like some pre-seed funding as well, but they teach you how to fundraise at the end of the day. It is such a process, right? So we're going to start that process probably like within like the next 90 days. The idea here is kind of post that program, we're going to go and try to find some very mission-driven venture capital funds that are well versed in healthcare to take this to market even further with us. Yeah.
Okay. How like when you got that acceptance, like how pumped were you?
Dude, I was so pumped. I was like, I couldn't even imagine that sort of thing happening to me before.
Short span of 2 years is not that long.
No, it isn't, right? But it's like
has it felt long?
It has felt like a lifetime.
I bet.
I'll tell you.
I bet because you're eating, breathing, and sleeping this.
Oh yeah, absolutely. They say that there is no work-life balance anymore. It's work-life harmony. It's like these two things are intercoupled now to the point where you're never going to separate them. But how do you let those kind of live in harmony is the thing you got to figure out as a founder.
Dude, I'm so glad you used that word. I just did some deep meditation over the weekend, and harmony was a big thing that kept coming up. Through frequency and sound. I got this new app I've been using my brain is like,
how do you meditate? What's like your style?
So for how I've learned to meditate is an app called Waking Up, who Sam Harris developed. He's a neuroscientist and he spent time in silent retreat. So he brings the science aspect to meditation as well as the spiritual aspect because he sat in silent retreat for a long time and brings all the spirituality aspects to it. So I've used his app for a really long time. And he will walk you through some visualizations, but really getting you to come to the extreme present. Like I know a lot of people say, oh, my meditation is sorry, I had an itch in my eye. Visualizing something. He's not, no, close your eyes. Let's actually do a little quick one. Let's do it. For everyone listening, I hope if you're not driving, don't close your eyes. Please don't wreck your car. But he would say, okay, let's close your eyes and notice the sensation of where you're sitting. And let's start to breathe. And notice where you feel your breath. Where do you feel your breath the most? Is it at the tip of your nose? Is it in your chest? Notice what you notice. Do you feel a tingling sensation in your fingers? What are you hearing? It's just bringing you to where is attention. And we're going to end the meditation because I don't want to be boring and silent on the air because you need to create gaps of space in between, right, for time to get there. But it's where is your presence? And where are you? Are you behind your eyes? And what I do for people is like, if I cut off the front of your face, are you still you? Yes.
Yeah.
So do you not feel you in your foot? So where does consciousness exist? And it gets very deep, right? It pulls back all these curtains of that. But that has helped me so much throughout life. Because what he's really doing is that all day we start to identify with thought. And that is ego. Ego, people hear the word ego and they want to think negativity. The ego is bad. Well, without ego, you would not be Cole.
You're right. You wouldn't have this sense of self. It really is that sense of self.
No, because we are spiritual beings having a human experience, and ego brings us into the body.
Of course.
Without ego, we are not attached to self. And so when you have through enough meditation, you can start to remove the ego. and really find out where are you, right? And you've learned that everything that you're seeing, feeling, witnessing is a part of consciousness. It has to be. Where else is it showing up?
Exactly. It's all your own sort of subjective perspectives in your head.
Yeah. So you asked the question. So now, now I just started using this new app called ENDL. I don't know how you say it, Endel. And it kind of helps with ADHD, but it creates this harmonistic frequency sounds and everything that kind of just tunes out the rest of the noise in your mind and lets you. And now I just like to focus on that sound because it's keeping me extremely present. Because Sam Harris would say that you should be able to meditate in a construction zone.
Yeah, you're right.
Because
it's like about kind of finding cheesy, but like inner peace, right? But it's about kind of being able to focus on something that is almost elsewhere in a way.
And it's finding your anchor. And he said you can even use thought as an anchor. And like for those that listen, I've never meditated. Imagine like all your thoughts are like if you're standing on a balcony or a bridge looking over the highway, your thoughts are all the cars racing by. And sometimes you end up in a car. You don't even realize it. And now you're cruising down the highway doing 60 miles an hour. Meditation helps you pull yourself back out of the car and back onto the bridge and let that thought continuously go by. And it's that muscle of getting out of the car and coming back to the bridge is why you do meditation and why it's a practice, just like going to the gym. You can't go to the gym once. You have to continuously go to build that muscle. And the more you do it, the more you can stay present. Like in this conversation, for 95% of it, I've been directly here with you.
Yeah, of course. Honestly, that's like one of the tenets that I take with me through life. The way that I see like kind of going through life is live presently and do it with intention, right? If you're going to be fully present with somebody, like have an intention kind of behind it, make it meaningful, right? If you're able to achieve, I think both of those two things, you're going to be incredibly happy. You're going to be able to like have the things that you want because you have intention, but you're also going to be able to enjoy them because you're not yearning for what comes next, or you're not stuck in the past. You're there right now. And it's something that I have to practice almost every day. I think meditation's a great way to do it.
No, it is the practice.
Yeah,
it is the practice.
Yeah.
My sister's she's probably one of the closest things I know to God or present. And she always says all the time, Ryan, you're not a human doing, you're a human being. So just be.
Yeah, just be. I love that. Oh, that's amazing. Like I'm gonna remember that now. Right? Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
Like we are human beings.
Yes.
And being is a part of our experience.
Yes, being. One of the best sort of metaphors that I think I've gotten along this kind of founder's journey was a mentor told me, Cole, every day is going to be like this ever-changing garden path. Everything you do is going to wildly shift the sort of path in front of you, and you're going to make those decisions multiple times a day. Now, that's something that can feel overwhelming. It can almost destroy you, or what you could do instead is just follow the path, right? If you're making good decisions, in small steps, chances are when you make 100 of those small good steps, you're going to end up in a pretty good place. It's not always about making one really good big step,
Right. No, it is. It's taking it second by second.
Yeah.
That's all we got.
Living
all we have right
presently.
now, Cole, is this conversation that we're in right here.
Yeah, of course.
It's beautiful. Okay, so how do we get on that? Harmony, right? I think that's what we were talking about.
Yeah,
harmony,
you're right. It was this
frequency.
harmony,
I'm trying to bring us back.
Yeah. Work-life balance.
Yeah. Work-life balance. Yeah. But and so how did you describe it? It's work-life harmony?
Of course, yeah. So your work in your life, when you're a founder, is going to be intertwined forever. You're always going to be on the clock.
How does your wife handle that?
That's a great question. You know what? Wives, spouses, your significant others, they're co-founders in the same way that you're a co-founder in your business. Sometimes they even provide more to the table than maybe some of your other co-founders do. And I mean that in no mean way. I actually mean that in a very kind of uplifting way. These people are your support system. The best founders, the best businesses out there, they had a support system around them. And that doesn't just mean like talent or expertise or people that, are cut into the business that want to make some money off of it, but your own mental well-being. It's being able to almost like act as an advisor, right? My wife is one of my greatest advisors, right? I bounce everything off of her. She knows everything that happens.
No, that's beautiful. I love that. And it is important. And I love that you use the word co-founder because it is it's extremely important. I have a prior military background, and we hats off to all the military spouses because they're in it just as much.
Yeah.
And being an entrepreneur is really super involved when it consumes your life, and it's the only thing you can think about. They're along for the ride.
Of course. Yeah. You're a family at the end of the day, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when you make that decision, you're bringing your family along with them, right? Your wife might not appear on the capitalization table, but she is just as bought in, hopefully, as you are at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
And you're on that ride together. And, you're going through all the highs, all the lows, and they're the one that's always going to be there, since the beginning. They were there sometimes before you even started that sort of business.
Yeah.
They've seen it all. Yeah.
Yeah. That's beautiful, man. I love that. I love that you got a good support system. What you're doing is really, really cool. So what's next?
What's next is, going up to Baltimore. So it's just going to be engrossed, like 3 months of working on the business, mentorship, being able to make great connections with different hospital systems. For me, the big thing on my mind right now is just getting this into as many hands as possible. We've kind of gotten it to that late pilot stage where we've done a lot of very good research to show that it's not only safe, but also really effective for clients. And we didn't want to move fast and break things, right? That's not right in mental health care. But we've reached that point where we're like, oh, we've got something here that can really, really make a difference for people. Let's try to get that into as many hands as we can right now that want it. So that's what the future holds for me in these next few months.
And so in these fundraising rounds, I mean, what does Opal need right now to grow? Is it users?
Traction. Yeah. It needs users. So like I said,
so now it's the marketing, outreach, everything like that. We're doing it right now.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly. We're doing it right now. There you go.
We're doing it right now. Where do they go if they want to use it?
You can go to chat.heyopal.com, and you don't even need an account. You can just try it. You can give us feedback if you want to, but it's there free for clients. It's just like a way to give back to our community, right? A lot of people used it during Milton and Helene when they weren't able to get in touch with their therapist or really anybody, but it's there around the clock for you. You don't even need it connected to a therapist.
What's crazy about these language models and doing this is I've done the chat thing where I give a scenario of humans because I feel like we're all little computer programs and probabilities and statistics on how outcomes are going to go, right? And I'll give it a scenario and I'll ask for what do you predict to be the outcome, and it will give me something. And like, no, give it to me now in a percentage. It is wild what it will do.
I'm going to start doing that. I like that. Bring it back to the numerics.
Yes. And because it won't at first, because you're asking it a qualitative thing. So it's going to give you a qualitative answer. And so then I ask it to give me the quantitative, and it will break it down off of probabilities of the outcomes that could come. And let me tell you, I was impressed.
Yeah.
I was impressed because I do use my chat often. I had to have it do cool things, and I wanted to know who I am. So when I ask it a question, it's tailored to me. And so it knows what I do. It knows my goals and aspirations and things like that. And so, or things, even in challenges, and I'll get, as a leader, I'm going through this, and this is a scenario. What should be the outcome? What's the probability of this? It's crazy what pops up in there.
I love that because data-driven decision-making, right, is so important in business. Like your gut is really important, but being able to make like hard dynamic decisions based upon like, what is my probability I'm going to win when I go down each one of these sort of paths? Like that's what you're doing as a business leader. At the end of the day, you got to be pretty good at it in order to make things work. But you said something that was really important and where I think things are going, right? You said that it's tailored to me. So a lot of these questions around like AI bias and AI equity, I think come back to that point, right? We have today sort of these one size fits all models that are really good at what they do. But to me, the future is going to be, how do you make that personalized in a private way, I guess, personalized so that it's not biased towards you, but it is tailored completely to you. It's not a one size fits all thing. That is going to be really
becomes
cool.
a subconscious to you.
Exactly. Yeah. Like a sidekick, or people call them a co-pilot. It's an overused term, but like, I think once we have, if you can build up a large context kind of about yourself, these models can tell you something really
cool.
incredible.
I asked mine, what are my greatest strengths and weaknesses? What are my greatest areas for improvement? It knows because I keep feeding it.
Yeah, of course.
Right. Those are prompts and questions and then when I read them, I'm like,
And those are things that will make your life better at the end of the day.
Well,
Like what these things are is an incredible mirror that show you the really important things that you've missed. And that's what we do for therapists at the end of the day. We want it to be a mirror that shows you the highlights, the things that you might have missed throughout all the noise. But it's like that kind of advisor that's like, hey, you know what? Maybe you should focus on this other thing right now. That was really important what you said. Yeah.
Yeah, no, you can get great summaries. And speaking of that, I've known of this tool, but I think we just identified a big use for it. Have you used Notebook LM yet?
Yeah, Notebook LM is really cool, man.
Crazy, dude.
You do a podcast thing. It can make podcasts.
It can make, but not only that, the summary. Well, we just identified that if we upload our YouTube videos from the podcast, it can give us some within seconds. It watches the whole video and gives you a whole detailed outline of what happened. It's crazy. I think if you're not using these tools to learn, you're missing, because you can just absorb so much more information.
So do you think people are like more excited about this stuff or more scared? Like, because it could be both, right?
I think a little bit of both, but I don't think people really understand the magnitude of how quickly this is happening.
Yeah,
because I'm on the forefront of it now, and even getting like, I brought the first AI class to the brokerage here to teach agents how to use AI in their business.
That's awesome.
And, you know, even I went to Keller Williams big event. I talked with their head tech people, and they're behind on the train of how quickly they need to be on this. Now, we just did a partnership with Stone Air. I can't remember. I'm sorry, I forgot the part. We just got some private equity, a new CEO, a little more tech focused. But all the industries need to. I mean, this is a place for a huge disruption to happen, and you're on the forefront of it. Right, in an area. I mean,
you are too. Yeah, you're seeing it. It's early. We're early right now, but getting in early is a good thing. Yeah,
early in the 2000s is different than the early now, because the window of early is smaller. Because I was pumping gas a few months ago, and a travel company was advertising how they incorporated ChatGPT into their travel services, and it was playing at the gas pump ad thing. Well, you know, the screen.
Yes, I know. They like play music at you now and like the advertisements.
But it was talking about ChatGPT at the dang gas pump.
Yeah, we didn't have that 2 years ago.
No.
That never ever happened, right? Yeah, exactly. It is
no.
incredible how quickly all this moves. And it's because people are wise to it, right? They see the potential for
we're
what
sitting here talking
here.
about it right now. I mean, it's like, you know, and I'm watching, do you watch any of the AI conferences that are going on across the globe?
Oh, yeah, of course.
I can't remember what are some of those guys' names on there, but, you know, I learned about Liquid AI, which is this fascinating company going to localize, you know, AI onto the device so it doesn't have to go to the cloud.
Yeah.
You know, the one guy on there is saying if a country or business doesn't AI, it will die.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
The motto right now is like AI or die.
Yeah, I almost see it as like the same way as kind of the internet came about, where there was a lot of skepticism about it of like, I don't really know how this can be used for business. Like we see the potential here, but it's really not like kind of catching on or anything like that. But look at us now, right? The internet is pretty much everything. So I draw that parallel a lot, but I think you make a good point that we're on like this accelerated timeline now because we stand on the backs of giants, right? We stand on all of this engineering that came before us that lets us move so much faster than where we were before. So instead of it being like a train, it's like a rocket ship now, right?
We're on the rocket. We are literally on the rocket. You know, and I'm trying to figure out where humans and our skill sets are going to be, like to your point, right? So empathy is a hard thing to teach a computer to understand right now, but it's getting there. It might not be perfect. It might only get 90% as good, but sometimes 90% is good enough.
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking in everything that we do, where does the human element come in needed for work?
Absolutely.
Right.
Because if people will seek it more often now.
Because it will make less mistakes, right? You train a model to be able to diagnose all the symptoms of things, right? Or down to disease. And it can, where does a doctor come in? Right? Because a doctor can make error. Maybe they don't know of all the possibilities that are out there, but this model does. You know, so you plug in your symptoms or it gives a blood and boom, this is what you got. And here's what you need to do to remedy it. And I think when we get into quantum computing and how crazy that's going to be with quantum accelerated with AI, we are going to, I'm fascinated by old people. I am.
Yeah.
I am. And, you know, you think about, okay, when I'm 90, years old, 90 years young. The amount of change that I will see from the 90-year-old now will be 10x greater, right? You can go back 90 years from now. What year is it? It's 1930, right? 1940. Yeah, give or take 1930. I don't know. I can't do math right now. What were they going through? Great Depression. World War I had ended. World War II's on the brink, right? We don't know internet, industrial revolutions coming up. Model Ts are flying around. Cars or things. There's still a few horse and buggies going on, too, right? Yeah. Planes weren't exactly flying, right? They saw all that now to the internet, to now there's AI. The advancement that we will see will be even greater than that.
Oh, absolutely. You think we're going to be the computer savvy old people? I hope so.
I don't even think computer will be the word.
You're right. I don't think it will.
It will be, did we integrate with the silicon or did we not?
Yeah. And I have this kind of idea that computer science will be a good career for our generation and maybe our kids' generation. It will be science. It'll just be science. Yeah, you're right. It'll just be science. It'll be a thing for our generation and our kids' generation, but our grandkids' generation, I don't know. Now we're getting into territory where everything just looks very, very different, very new, but you have to embrace it. Right?
Oh, I'm not scared of it.
Exactly.
That's why I'm so, because I was living under a rock for half a second, and I love tech. And so I went, whoa, I gotta wake up and get ahead of this thing because I want to ride the wave. I don't know where the wave's going. I just know I don't want to get smacked by it.
Yeah, of course.
Right? Like
better yet, like directing where the wave is going, right? You can only do that if you're on the front of it. If you're able to see what is, 10 steps ahead, not kind of just dealing with what is 10 steps behind. And I think that goes for any sort of disruptive technology or any sort of just disruptive energy that's in the world, right? Being present with it is just as important as, maybe embracing it, but that gives you the opportunity to make it something that is ethical, something that is good, something that humans want to see at the end of the day without it, going off the rails or something.
So what's been most fascinating, since you're in the inner workings and understanding of how this works, like what's been most impressive, or where do you think, because I have surface level, just my foresight of watching trends, right? I look at history and where things have gone. I've seen how social media, the internet, and how we've adapted that as a culture. And now Starlink's bringing more connection across the globe to people who aren't connected. So we're ever going to be this super connected planet. What do you see?
Yeah, I almost envision this world with AI agents that kind of operate on your behalf as a liaison. Opal is like one way of expressing that in the therapy world.
Explain for those who are listening that are like, an AI agent, what the heck is that?
Yeah, of course. It's like a newer thing that you're kind of seeing now. 2 years ago, we would have...
6 months ago, you didn't have an AI agent.
Exactly. 6 months ago. You still don't really have one today. But where I think this is kind of going is maybe it's in your phone, maybe it's in the cloud or whatever it is, but it's something that is personalized to you that deals with your day-to-day. I mean, this is always something that we wanted computers to do, right? But I think the beauty of it is that it makes your communication with other people more meaningful. It lets you think on like a second order of like when you and I are having a conversation, but when we were planning this podcast, imagine if that was kind of settled for us. So when we finally got to this table, it was a much more meaningful interaction because it's a human interaction at that point. But all of like the admin, all of the
logistics, it's having I got Michael here, an assistant, our two assistants set up everything, but it happened like instant.
Exactly. Or it's able to consider everything at once. Right.
Did you see the video of the two AI bots talking to each other?
I did.
They changed the sound.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, that was like a new tool that I think, or it was new to me at least, some new communication protocol for AI agents for them to talk more,
which makes sense
quickly, right? Yeah, it does. We needed
when
that.
When I think about communication, because you have to get into this with language models, right? The word is a transfer of data through sound wave.
Of course, yeah.
The word always isn't the most efficient, right? We have to be very careful and critique our words in a way that expresses emotion and all that. Sound carries a lot more, a harmony, a frequency other than word can carry a lot more data.
You have tonality, you have like different implications of like how you say things, for instance.
Right.
Yeah, you actually
Right, but now
communicate a lot.
through this, but in those sounds, they're communicating through math and numbers to understand. Right back to the word, and you numbered them.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, if my definition of a word that I used is different than your definition, now you misinterpreted it.
Of course, it happens all the time. So this
transfer of data loses some information.
Yeah.
Where the way that I watch those bots, I was like, that makes sense. That is so much more efficient.
A higher order of communication, right? Mm-hmm. Today, we're in this world of correspondence where we send email and text messages back and forth, and it's all written out. And you're right, misunderstandings can kind of happen that way.
In a language, right? Mm-hmm. Where if it's this beep, boop, boop, whatever the computers were doing, there's no misinterpretation.
No, exactly. We've kind of reinvented a wheel a little bit in terms of just like computers obviously have been able to communicate like forever, like over the internet. That was like, exactly. That was like the point of like the internet. But now you're able to kind of have two, call them actually intelligent sort of systems, talk about something in more abstract terms. And it doesn't even matter how they communicated it that way. As long as it's maybe quicker or preserves the same information as you're saying. Mm-hmm. That's pretty cool.
Cool. I got a crazy question for you.
Yeah.
If AI becomes all-knowing, AGI of what they refer to.
Right.
Is that God?
Ooh, is that God? I don't... You know what? I think... So I'm religious, right? I believe in God.
As am I. But I'm saying, mm-hmm. Do we not say that God is all-knowing?
Yeah, but it can also be more than that, you know.
I know this is up for. I'm not saying this is it. I'm just saying, we create this thing.
The thing is, do we want to always know everything? Say you had an oracle that could give you the answer to absolutely anything. Say you could have an oracle that could tell you if
Matrix.
God would exist or not, right? Mm-hmm. And you got the answer back. Okay, what then? You've got the answer to absolutely everything you can desire. You know, I wonder what life looks like after that. And that's the cool question for me. Is
what if the answer is there is no answer because it's an egotistical human experience for there to be an answer?
Well, isn't the answer like 42, something like that? You ever read Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy?
No, I never did.
So there's like a all omnipresent kind of AI system in there. And I read it a while ago, so I might be misinterpreting this, but it took forever. They asked it what the meaning of life was. And it was like, okay, I'll get back to you in 1,000 years. So all of the people that had built that system, that had the knowledge of it, you know, they were very long gone by the time it finally got the answer. And it gave the answer back and it just said 42. But nobody knew what that meant because it was able to give a correct answer. But anybody that was involved in how that would interpret, it was long gone. Like all the knowledge had disappeared. So I think that is like a more comical interpretation of what the world would look like.
For sure. And I'm not saying it, but I'm just, and back to like 90, when we're 90.
Yeah.
The world just looks so different. Even if we're even on, right? We'll be on Mars or something. I don't know.
Well, I'll give you like a little thought experiment of something that's not AI, right? Yeah. You know, like when photography came out and people thought like, do we need painters anymore at the end of the day? We could express everything perfectly. Like this is exactly what, you know, this scene looked like because we're able to kind of capture it with a camera. But that almost made paintings more valuable in certain ways, right? Because there is some sort of expression there, but that expression is necessarily human. And that at the end of the day might mean human expressions and human communications become more valuable because they're more rare.
So I just had this conversation with Steve, I'm forgetting when his last, Diazio, and he runs the School of Creativity. And we were talking about creativity because what we're talking about there is creativity.
Yeah.
Right. So a picture is only capturing a moment of what was creative to create that moment, whereas a painting is going to be your interpretation and add your creativity of how you
subjective versus like the objective in a way. Yeah.
And so then it gets into, can AI be creative?
Sure, I'm sure it can, but the question is, do people want human creativity or do they want AI creativity?
But what happens when you can't distinguish the difference?
That's pretty scary, right? Well,
because you get into these AIs with the videos, like what happens when there's the AI the AI wrote the script, made the video, did everything. Nothing was ever filmed in this world. What happens when it gets into a place when you're trying to decipher, just like if you make a handbag, is it fake or real?
Yeah, exactly. And it's like there's this question too of, well, the AI learned its creativity from humans' creativity in a way. You could think about it as like a derivative in a way, but it's still creative. The question is, it's like, what is going to be the demand for human creativity versus machine creativity? I don't think it's going to be a black or white sort of thing. I think there are certain things that people will demand a machine's creativity for, but there are going to be things that I think people will, value with
for sure. I don't think just like we go retro now, right? People like record players are coming
There's
back.
charm to it, right?
There
and I
is,
think
there
that's
is.
like
and
what
I'm
people
not,
search for.
and that's then it's like regrounding. Go put your feet in the sand. Go write something. Go paint something. The human expression wants to do creativity, but from a business standpoint, this is where it comes back to: if the AI, like, we can be creative because they're back to therapeutic for us,
exactly,
grounds us. But for a business perspective, you take an hour to edit that video or do whatever, the AI can do it just as good with the same creativity in seconds.
Of course. And like,
so from an industrial business application, that may be where there's the friction.
Yeah. And we're going to get to a point one day where you're right. They're going to be better at humans at those mission critical sort of tasks. And if that does good for the world, where we make fewer mistakes in mission critical places, then we've built something that's incredibly beautiful, right? We as people at the end of the day solved a really hard problem for ourselves, which we might see as an adversary to people. I think a lot of people see AI as like an adversary to humans, but I think the thing to remember is that it was built by humans at the end of the day, with human intentions, with, mostly good intentions. I like to think about that, people are building these things mostly with good intentions at the end of the day.
I was just, and I know Elon's controversial, but I don't care, because the one side loved him and then they don't, and the other side, I don't care. I just look at him as a person and what his brain's doing and what he's built. He was just on a podcast, and the question was asked, what do you think the percentage is that AI does bad? Elon's answer was 20%. So 80% optimistic that we're going to be okay. And I was like, all right, I like that answer.
Yeah. And the CEO of Anthropic, have you heard of Anthropic, Claude, that model? I love Claude. I think it's a great model. He is a really interesting guy. And he put out an essay on his optimistic views towards like the 20-year picture of AI. And it was really enlightening. I forgot the name of the essay that he wrote, but it's out there on the internet. It's a really good read, and it was actually very grounded too. He explained it in, I think, very concrete terms, but it was refreshing to see sort of an optimistic perspective that was just as rigorous as maybe some of the more critical perspectives. I think it's easy to be critical of AI. There's plenty of problems that could come out of using it, but it's more productive, in my opinion, to focus on what is positive out of this. Can we see a net benefit from being able to use a tool like this? Yeah,
I agree. I mean, the internet has caused harm.
Of course, yeah, it's caused a ton of harm in a lot of different ways, and
It's
all sorts
war.
of things have. Yeah, it's changed war. Industrial revolution has, changed the way that we live life. Sometimes for the better, sometimes for the bad.
Where there's black, there's white.
Of course, yeah.
Right.
And you gotta trust the gray, right?
Yeah, the yin and the yang. Well, until I really started to study quantum, I didn't really understand why there would be a gray, and now I do, and that's a whole other conversation we could go on for hours about.
The world is, an indeterminate kind of place, right?
Oh, it can be, you can be 30% 0 and 70% 1. How does that even work? I don't know if you study qubits or what's going on in quantum computing, but quite fascinating. I'm curious, when you're in programming, how do you maintain your focus? What's your ideal time of day when you're locked in there and you're having to get under the hood? What does that look like for you?
Oh, for me, I'm a night owl, man. I do it like in the late hours, like 2 a.m., that sort of thing, when the world feels like it's asleep and it's very calm, and, obviously it's outside of business hours, so I'm not having to, do sales meetings, or, nobody's expecting me to be available at 2 a.m. That's the time for me to really sit down and focus deeply on those problems, because you hold a lot of context in your head when you're programming something, and you don't want to be let out of it often. It can be like sort of distressing in a way. So late nights for me
I
is
love the way
what
you
it
put
is.
that. You're
Yeah.
holding a lot of context in your head because I was just talking about focus. And the minute you get interrupted, to think that you get right back to that, it's like impossible.
Did you ever see The Social Network? You ever
Yeah.
seen that movie?
Yeah.
You remember the scene where they're like, "Shh, don't, he's locked in. He's locked in." And he's like over there like this. Yeah. Because when you bring yourself out of that, like all the kind of things that you're thinking about more technically in your head, they just fizzle. They're gone. And you have to get it back, and it can take a little bit of time. But
yeah, it's terrible.
yeah.
No, I love that. There is something so special about the creativity that happens after, 11 o'clock, midnight, 2 a.m., 3 a.m., that you do feel the energy is different.
Yeah. Again, I feel like the world slows down a little bit, right? I like summertime a lot for that reason. The world feels like it takes a step back for a minute, and it allows you to kind of look at things from like a 10,000-foot view. Yeah.
Yeah. It gets into a whole thing of like quantum and energy and things that we don't fully understand, that think that they're not there, but we do feel it.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Yeah.
Or they're there, but you have to notice them or be searching for them in a way. Yeah.
For anyone that's still with us and they're like, this is Talkin St. Pete, you guys are off the rails.
Oh man. Yeah. We've strayed far, but it's been a good talk.
No, it's been a great
really
talk.
enjoyed this. I don't
hope
often think about these sort of things like on a day-to-day basis, but like again, being able to bring yourself back and think about these things. I think
about
important.
This every day.
Good. Yeah, this is a good thing to think about.
No, but it's fun to pick your brain and get your perspective and bring our consciousness together. That's really what we did. We just merged two thought bubbles, right? And see and explore it all together. And so doing this software startup, how has St. Pete supported you, if at all?
Oh, no, absolutely. I think that we've got a great budding startup scene here. And, if I were to characterize it in one way, it's a very give first sort of attitude about it. You can go other places. There's other startup scenes. Sometimes they can be like more competitive, more cutthroat, but we're trying to get it started here, right? So anybody that is succeeds in the view of the entire city, right? We actually have a lot of really good resources here, and I'll shout some of them out. Like one of the first things that I did was I found a mentor at the Greenhouse, which is just a free resource that St. Pete puts on for startups, like to get a mentor to
what is the Greenhouse?
Mentorship.
Tell us who those who don't know.
Yeah, so I think it's it's downtown. It's in downtown St. Pete. The building itself might actually be green. I'm not too sure, but what it is free resources for people starting small businesses and startups in St. Petersburg. They host this thing called A Million Cups. I think it's on like Wednesdays in the morning. You can practice pitches there. They'll get you lined up with mentors. It's a great resource. We had pitch night as well. I think that's every year. I did pitch night like a few years ago. So that was great for, exposure, great for practice. And like, look where we are now. Yeah. It's a great place to start a business.
The person, I didn't tell you this, but who was on right before you is Mike Sweezy, who's the CEO and president of Economic and Development for St. Pete. So
there you go. This is on his mind every day. I'm sure.
That's who I was talking to right before you came in here today. So yeah, there's a lot of things that the city is doing, and it's cool. But I think coming from it. So what's the landscape, and how is it different from when you spent your time in New York versus St. Pete? Just bring it into a little bit of St. Pete.
So of course. We moved here for a reason, and like I think people stick here for a reason. There's something really unique that we've got about St. Petersburg here. And it's like we have this culture, I'll say, of like wellness, of being the best kind of version for yourself, but not in like a decadent way. And like we have all of these nice walking trails that are almost like more than that. It's like these pocketed beaches. It's like they're almost encouraging you to kind of take a winding path or explore like this beauty that you're in. And I think part of that, we get like this wonderful local art scene. When I say that St. Pete is in like a renaissance, I really mean it. Like we have this wonderful art scene. We have like a budding startup scene. We're really like growing and flourishing as a city. And I think it all is cohesive in its culture, and all the small businesses around here kind of believe in it, and they hold up that culture in a way
they really do.
You don't see in larger cities or really just other places.
So how's that? So in New York, I feel like there's such a scene there, but I feel like it's like so fast moving that people won't slow down to help you as much, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, yes and no, but like it's just a different thing. I would say that New York is still like a great place for different reasons.
No,
but what
I'm
we
not
have here,
of course,
but it's different, right? It's not St. Pete. Again, I live in St. Pete I moved from New York to here back to St. Pete for a reason. So it must be my preference. But I think we have a very unique culture again around here. Like everybody knows what the culture of New York kind of looks like. They don't know what it looks like here, right? And I think people are pleasantly surprised when they do visit here for the first time at really just how nice it is, even for locals, right? It feels like it was built for locals, which is great.
It was built, well, yeah, because of all the local businesses.
That's what I mean, man. Yeah, like
that's
the
what makes
local
it.
businesses believe in this sort of thing, and they're the ones that make it cohesive in that culture, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So is most of your, I mean, do you hang out at any of the coffee shops or anything? Or are you locked in at home in the office? Like, what's your environment? What's your week look like for Cole?
Oh yeah, totally. So yeah, I do a lot of work from home, but
Yeah.
like that was mostly just because I've been working from home for like pretty much my whole career,
Right.
right? Once things like
Yeah,
took
you got
off
your
in
space.
COVID,
Yeah, you're locked in.
I like it. Yeah, you
Yeah.
can lock in. You can
Yeah.
kind of design everything to like your own sort of. It's great.
Yeah.
But like I love Paradeco downtown. It's a great coffee shop. I'll go meet people there.
Nice.
So
Nice.
you know, it's a great place to network with people, and you know, you can meet in like beautiful contexts, which is always nice, right?
Absolutely.
I think people like San Francisco a lot for that reason.
Absolutely. So Cole, it's your birthday. We have to stay in St. Pete. Where are we going for dinner?
Ooh, that's a good question. Oh man, I'm trying to think of where I went kind of last year. I'll tell you, it might not be a dinner spot, but one of the most solid restaurants that I've loved in St. Pete, like since high school, like been around as long as I could remember. Bodega downtown. You been to Bodega?
Yeah, I know Bodega.
Yeah, it's like the best Cuban sandwich ever. You know, I was thinking like if I was craving like anything, or I was going to tell somebody like what's that one place in St. Pete that you'd want to go to kind of like experience something from around here, it'd be that. Yeah,
I love that. You know, we learned from Nathan, who helped open Green Bench Brewery, that Bodega was one of the first spots that really helped that area come to be.
Yeah,
because they were looking at that when they opened Green Bench Brewery, that Bodega was like another staple that was there that would help draw traffic down to that area. Then Jared opened Intermezzo, and it became like this whole little thing down there that where now there's more businesses that open down there. So Bodega definitely has its influence on that part of downtown and helping it develop.
and you know, like you said, we got the cool breweries and stuff right here. A lot of towns have like their own cool breweries, but like these are ours. You know, like I know Cigar City when I go see it other places, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's like my ticket from home in a way. You know,
No,
that's always fun.
It's great. It's great. So when you're not locked in behind the computer, how else are you spending your time?
I'm walking around outside in St. Pete, man. One of my favorite things to do is actually pretty simple. I take a walk with my dog and my wife, and we walk around the pier, and we just walk Vinoy Park, and we just kind of, well, one, we talk, but we also just sort of appreciate the place that we live in, right? I think if you take a sort of step back and just, when you go on a walk next time, just look around, but not even think about anything. It's like another form of meditation, right? Notice how they've kind of set things up in a way where it really encourages you to explore the beautiful parts of where you live. There's all these little pocketed beaches, or like the path that it takes is a bit winding, but it's there for you to kind of rediscover like the beauty of where you are.
You are right. The paths, they're not straight.
No,
not all of them.
No, not all of them. No,
they have a
they
line
might
to
be
them.
like, you know, you might trip on them. They might not be perfectly straight in that way, but they're not.
But
They're
there's a
winding.
wind.
There's a wind to them. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, to explore. I hate straight lines. So, no, that's cool, man.
They should have built the pier as a winding path. Well, I guess they kind of did. It's just too straight of a line.
Yeah, it's straight. It's a cool pier though. It's a cool pier.
You can kind of build a pier. So
yeah. No, it's cool. It's cool. It's cool. There's so much history here, dude. This is awesome. We could go on forever. I gotta wrap this up because I gotta get somewhere at 5 o'clock. But, oh man, dude,
time flies.
Time
it really
flies.
Does. This is amazing. Thanks for having me on.
No, absolutely. I'm super excited to watch you grow and see what you do, and hop into the app and check it out.
Likewise.
So say it again in case they missed it. Where do we go to find your app?
So yeah, if you're just anybody, you can experience Opal for yourself at chat.heyopal.com. And if you're a therapist, you can even sign up for this to have it for your clients too. You can just go to heyopal.com.
And that's the really big application right now, right? I mean, for therapists to be using this and helping you grow this is through them adopting it and then bringing it to their clients as a tool.
And these days we're looking for feedback, right? We just want to know that it's built to make your practice better, to make your clients happier. Yeah.
Dude, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. Thank you. Appreciate you.
No, thank you. Yeah.
For those that are still with us, the real fans, what's one word that they can comment in the comments below?
Ooh, presence.
Presence. Oh, that's so good. Good job, Cole. Thank you for watching. Go check out this amazing chat.heyopal.com.
Got it.
Comment presence below. Share with a friend. Like, subscribe if you haven't already. And thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for watching and supporting the channel here. It means the world to us. And we're going to continue to do great things. And have yourself a blessed day. Bye, everyone.